Hey, hello, we are back with another episode, episode number 2. How do we deal with failure? This one's a tough one. This one I thought about for a while leading up to this podcast, looking back at the times that I felt like I came up short. And I was pretty hesitant on wanting to do an episode like this because I felt like, well, then I would have to be vulnerable and share my past experiences for me to really make my point about dealing with failure. And I'm sure everybody else has their perspective on dealing with failure. I'm not saying mine is the right way. All I could share is my perspective based on my life experiences. And so I'm here now. I decided to do it and I'll share my perspective and hopefully it would be helpful for you and helping you deal with failures in life because we all deal with them. We all come up short in some way, shape, or form, right? But how do we bounce back? How do we deal with it while it's going on, while it's still fresh in our experiences? So I'll start off with the quote that really stuck with me, kind of share my life experiences, and then wrap it up with my perspective on dealing with failure. So I really enjoy watching this show. It's like a sports show. It's a pre-game, post-game sports show called Inside the NBA on TNT. Some of you basketball fans probably know them. It's hosted by Ernie Johnson, Shaq, Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith. These guys have been around for a really long time doing this show. I really like it because I really like their insight on the game because they talk about, the current events of the NBA, a lot of trades, a lot of transactions that are going on, and the games that are going on that day. They break down the game itself, and so I find their insight very interesting, very informative, and most importantly, they are very entertaining. I mean, probably like the most entertaining show that I've seen. So Shaquille O'Neal, one of the hosts, he says this several times. He's mentioned this a couple times about success and failure. And if you guys don't know him, he's a Hall of Famer basketball player that's played many years in the NBA, won 4 championships, 3 with the Lakers, 1 with the Heat. He was in the league for a couple years with the Orlando Magic, and during that time, he has not won a championship. Trying to make his mark in NBA history and trying to win his first championship. During that time, he did come across the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan, and he lost the second time they matched up in the playoffs while Jordan was making his second run for a three-peat in NBA championships. And so Shaq mentioned after they lost the series that Jordan went up to him and said, before you succeed, you must first learn to fail. And he's mentioned that several times when I've seen content with Shaq. I don't know if it was always on the show or if on other occasions, but that definitely stuck with me. Interesting coming for Jordan that has won 6 championships. One of the greatest basketball players ever, telling that to Shaq, who's also one of the greatest centers to ever play the game of basketball. Both Hall of Famers, both regarded as the greatest of all time. And so when we think about success, do we ever talk about the failure before we get there? So Is failure a prerequisite? Is it necessary for us to experience before we achieve success? And what do we define as success? What do we define as failure? And so I guess I'll start off by sharing my life experience, a little bit about my life journey. So, growing up, I've always been a big basketball fan, as you already know, especially with the content I produce. It started off being a basketball oriented content and just wanted to share the thing that I was most passionate about with the content. But growing up, the dream was really to be in the NBA, to be a professional basketball player. As every kid's dream, right? Any kid that loves sports or loves basketball, their dream was always to be in the NBA. That's every kid's dream. Majority of the kids are not gonna achieve that dream. It's only a small percentage, realistically, right? Now that I'm a adult, I can see that. I could see that perspective. But as a kid, you don't really have that kind of perspective. All you really have is a dream. So when I was a kid, maybe like, man, 7, 8 years old, I was watching Lakers games. I was watching Shaq himself with the Lakers and Kobe winning 3 championships in a row. Watching every Lakers game and playing basketball outdoors when I was a kid. And growing up, I never got involved in organized basketball, as a lot of kids do, a lot of parents do for their kids. You take them to organized basketball to a travel ball team, and over the years they play season after season with their travel ball team, probably with the same players, or move around different teams, and they probably get some training, they get some practice, and they understand the concept of organized basketball at an early age. And as they go on to high school, they end up being phenomenal high school players and even play on uh, in collegiate sports and even pro. And so I never had that growing up. I definitely love playing basketball, you know, and that's something that I always wanted to do, but I never played organized basketball. My parents didn't really have the understanding of putting me through travel ball teams or sending me to practices. My parents were just they just worked hard. They worked long hours. And so um during elementary school, I stayed at an after school program, a YMCA. If you guys don't know YMCA, it's like Young Men's Christian Association. Basically, uh, in my area, they had after school programs from like 3 to 6 p.m. where basically my parents wanted me to go there because they were working. They couldn't pick me up from school; they had to work, and so they needed a couple hours for me for daycare, right? And so during that after school program, I was really involved with the sports activities. Every season there'd be a different sport, like fall would be flag football, the winter would be basketball, spring would be soccer, in the summer they have softball, and I was into all that. I was really an active kid that loved sports in general. But specifically I really fell in love with basketball. And so the obviously growing up to that, being a Lakers fan, being so obsessed with the sport, I wanted to make it a career out of it, and that was the dream, to be in the NBA. And so you can understand the context. I didn't have or the organized ball, the travel ball experience at an early age. I was just playing, after school, um, seasonal basketball with my after school team against other YMCA programs and other schools, right? And so that was like the organized ball that I had, but it wasn't as legit as like a lot of these travel ball AAU programs. that a lot of kids get into growing up. And so, I didn't really have that kind of experience. And if you look at my attributes, I was a really short kid. I'm still short now. I'm like 5'4". I'm Asian. That's not really demographic of the NBA, to be honest. I mean, a 5'4" Asian, you see any 5'4" Asians playing in the NBA today? But in my head, I thought I was going to be like 6 foot and above. That was my thought process, even though my parents were short. And so I think even going into junior high, they had, their seasonal sports, and I always gravitated towards basketball. Trial for the junior high basketball team, played there. But again, outside of that, it's not like I had any personal training or any additional um, travel ball experience. And so I would really say once I got to high school, that's when I really understood organized basketball, and that's when I took my game to another level. You know, I felt like that's where um, I was exposed to legitimate organized basketball. And that's when I was learning drills. I worked pretty hard, even though I didn't have the resources that maybe other kids do. I think at around, ninth grade, I remember getting this content. So before YouTube, you know, people gave out their content in like DVD disc, and there's this content called Better Basketball, where I remember getting that as a gift from my sister, and a couple Better Basketball videos. I don't know if I still have it. I must have given it out to probably some of the players that I coached. But basically, one was on like improving on your offense, improving on your defense. Um, I remember having 3 discs. I forgot what the third one was, but I would watch those videos, and all the drills that they showed, I would work on them on my own. So that was my way of actually getting better at my game. Was watching those videos, understanding those concepts and those drills, and doing them on my own. So I would work on. Oh, I think the other one was dribbling drills. So all these drills that I saw in these videos, I practiced them on my own. And honestly, that's how I got better. All, so it's basically through watching videos and training on my own. And it was self-taught. But I did improve a lot through those videos. On top of that, playing high school basketball. And so I played all 4 years in high school. 2 of them went in junior varsity, 2 of them in varsity. So even at my stature, I was able to be effective and still produce. Even though I stayed at 5'4" in high school. I was kind of delusional thinking that I would grow taller, but I was banking on the fact that my grandparents were tall. At least yeah, on my grandfather that I didn't know that passed, uh, believing my grandmother that he was tall. But yeah, but eventually reality came around and I knew I wasn't going to grow. But I didn't want to believe that. I thought I was doing everything to try to make myself grow. I mean, geez, what I knew at the time was drink a lot of milk, sleeping early, sleeping before 10, getting enough sleep. Um, man, trying to eat a lot, but I felt like growing up when I was a kid, I didn't eat a lot. I was a pretty picky eater, in fact. And so that's probably what cost me some inches, if anything. But, genetically, it wasn't really in my favor. But I didn't want to believe that. But I tried really hard to see if I could grow. And, That didn't pan out. I stayed pretty short. And even with basketball, being a 5'4" Asian and even having worked hard on my drills and getting better at my skills, and I did improve a lot, and still being pretty skilled for someone with my attributes. Um, was I gonna be a collegiate player that was gonna be recruited? Very unlikely at my height. And in high school, as I got older, I started realizing that, and even in my junior year, and I contemplated on quitting basketball, which I actually did for a little bit, but I returned my senior year, which ended up being the right decision. But knowing that there was no career in it, right? And so having invested so much time into my craft and also recognizing contextually the limitations that I have, not just with my physical attributes, because not only are basketball players, you have to be at least 6 foot, you got to be athletic, you got to be skilled, you got to have all these things. Because if you really think about it, if you're in high school, it's the 1%, right? It's a small percentage that are playing college ball. And a small percentage of that, the 1% of collegiate basketball players going on to play the NBA. I mean, in the NBA roster only has what, like 450 to 500 players in the association. If you really think about it, it's extremely difficult to make it to the NBA. And so many basketball players, even now, probably even more now, competing to get into the NBA compared to um maybe 10, 15 years ago when I was playing ball. But even then, it was so competitive, right? And so that was a dream, right? But as you get older, reality hits and you realize, hey, this was not meant to be. It just isn't it. And even after the pursuit, even after high school, it's still contemplated on me on what if, right? What would happen if I was 6'3", I was 200 pounds, how good could I have been? What would have been my potential? Surely I could have played college ball, right? The level of commitment that I had, I felt like I worked pretty hard. I ended up being a decent basketball player with all the work that I put in, despite the limitations of the resources that I had growing up. And I didn't really have the parental support behind that too. It was just me alone, just me having a passion for the game and love for the game. That I really wanted to be good, and I really had a dream that I wanted to achieve. Every kid's dream, right? But man, when I look back, it's like, how do you compete with some of these kids that are maybe 6'2" to 6'7", that have the genetics, that have the athleticism, that come from maybe parents that support them, that come from parents that were even athletes themselves. I mean, how do you even compete with that, right? That played travel ball since they were 5 years old. I didn't have that kind of outlook when I was in high school. I didn't really understand that. But now at my age, I could see all that. I have that perspective. I could see, it's not the path to go, right? That's not the path. What's the likelihood to succeed and actually get into the NBA? And there's a lot of NBA players out there that worked hard, that had the attributes, got drafted and they accomplished their dreams, you know? And that's wonderful. No hate on them for accomplishing what they set out to do. But with the circumstances, I guess with the gifts that were given to them, and the resources that they had, you know, they were more likely to succeed, right? In making it to the NBA. And so even after high school, even in my college years, I contemplated on it for so long. I always thought of that what if question because I know after high school I was done. In my head I was done, but I always wondered what if. It's like, man, I wish I was taller. If I was taller, man, I'd be in the NBA. You know how good I would be? I'd play college ball, I'd get recruited. Easy, right? How hard could it be? How much easier could it have been? So because it hasn't happened, because I thought about it so much, it felt like I did feel like at times I failed. And the thing is, it was such a big part of my identity that even during college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life because growing up, everything was about being in the NBA and being playing basketball. As good, as much of a drive as I had and how good I was, looking back, I definitely could have worked harder. I definitely could have been a better basketball player. Could have been more athletic. Could have more put more into it. There's no doubt. I could have been way more disciplined, way more structured. But I was just a kid that didn't have enough guidance. That didn't have a healthy perspective. And if I had someone guiding me, maybe it would have been a different story. Maybe it would have led a different path, or who knows, right? If I was 6'3", I mean, how and if I played organized ball ever since being 5 to 6 years old, playing travel ball, playing AAU, how good could I have really been? Maybe pretty damn good, right? Maybe I would have played college ball. Maybe I would have played professionally or even make it to the NBA. But reality is that's not the case, right? And so dealing with that was tough. I think overcoming that and recognizing that I think for the longest time, I did really feel like I failed. I failed at life, you know? I failed at the one thing I really want to achieve, right? That dream, becoming an NBA basketball player. I really did put everything into it, put my heart into it. Of course, I could have been more disciplined, more structured. I could have been a way better basketball player, right? But I'm not perfect, right? I'm a human being. But man, I really put a lot of time into it. And so going into college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I was kind of doing what other people are telling me to do or suggested, but not really knowing what what I myself wanted to do after having this dream that I didn't achieve. And so that was always a difficult thing to wrestle with was not being able to achieve my dream and what could have been if I had certain things right. And so there's obviously a lot other life experiences where I definitely felt like I failed. We all experience these things, right? We don't pass a class or maybe we don't get into the school that we want to go for college. We don't get this job that we really worked hard for. We don't make the basketball team. We don't make a certain sports team. We don't make the cut. Jeez, I mean, a relationship doesn't work out. Jeez, there's so many things, right? We all make mistakes. We all come up short, right? So how do we deal with it? How do we deal with that kind of failure? Ooh, that's tough. I mean, eventually for me, Yeah, it did suck. I put a lot of time into it. Sometimes I felt regret. Why did I put so much time into basketball? Like, why did I have to like basketball so much that I had to invest so much time into it? And when I look back, honestly, I wouldn't regret it because at the time, that's what I enjoyed doing. And how can you fault a kid for doing what he loved, right? Even if he didn't really achieve his dream. That's what, at the end of the day, that's what I wanted to do, right? So how can you really hate on that? And it's not like I knew any better, right? And so, eventually, I'm at peace with it. It doesn't bother me anymore. I'm a grown man. Like I made my decisions. I live with it. No regrets. You know, the silver lining could be, I learned a lot through basketball. I learned a lot about teamwork, about managing players, managing personalities. Even afterwards, I coached for a couple years too. Um, Understanding the dynamics of coaching, uh, understanding basketball IQ, knowing schemes and all that, managing personalities, being selfless, being one for the team, understanding your role and doing your role the best that you can. So there's a lot of concepts with basketball, a lot of life lessons you could definitely learn from basketball, from sports in general. And so, those were things that I definitely took from from playing basketball for sure. I would say the biggest thing is what we're talking about right now is dealing with failure. Because you could say, well, I failed to achieve my dream, right? My MBA dream, which something as a kid I always wanted to do. You get it. Honestly, you get a lot of people. There's a lot of NBA players. They all achieved their dream, right? But what about now? That's a small percentage, right? That's a 1 to 2% of NBA players. What about the rest? What about the 98 that really tried but came up short? Do we ever talk about them? We like talking about these people that made it to the NBA, won the championship, and these players say, "Hey, I achieved my dream. I set out what I wanted to do." Right? You could do anything as long as you believe and work hard. Didn't I have that mindset too? What about me? What about the 98%? They all didn't achieve their childhood dream, right? Did they have the same resources of the people that did succeed? Did they have the right circumstances? Is that so? Where I'm coming from is that a fair thing to say? Of course, he achieved his dream, and that I think that's wonderful. That's very inspirational. But we got to be realistic too, right? I mean, it's okay to dream, but if we dream too much, if we dream of something that's so outlandish, I mean, do we become delusional in pursuing that dream? It's interesting because I listened to an interview with J. Cole and I believe his name was Bob Meyer. He used to be the uh either the president or the GM of the Golden State Warriors. He recently stepped down. They had a very interesting interview. J. Cole was talking about how during his rise of becoming, you know, this popular rapper. I don't know if you guys know J. Cole. He's a hip hop artist. But before his success, he was talking about how you kind of had to be delusional to pursue that because not everybody else is going to believe in you, right? In order to succeed, to make a living of being a hip hop artist. And he ended up achieving it. But he talked about being a little delusional on that pursuit. I mean, think about Michael Jordan, who got cut his sophomore year in his varsity. You'd think people believed he would be the greatest basketball player then. But for him, that really fueled that was the fuel to the fire, right? He had an incredible competitive drive and incredible work ethic. And each and every day he worked towards it and eventually got to that point, right? So you definitely have to work hard. You definitely have to have that drive to achieve great things. But how much of that do you also need the attributes? Do you need the resources, right? I mean, could you, with a 5'4" short, 5'4" Asian guy with that same drive and hard work, be able to, let's say, did the same thing that Michael Jordan did? Would he be able to be in the NBA and be called the greatest basketball player ever? I doubt it. Not to say that you shouldn't. There's a lot of great. I mean, there's Muggsy Bogues. He's 5'3". He was in the NBA for the longest time, but he had a pretty successful NBA career, right? So, but that's an outlier, right? So, my point. So, what I was trying to get at is some people are just delusional in their approach, right? But yet, you kind of need the delusion. You kind of have to put that dream out there for you to really achieve it. You have to really believe in that, I guess, that delusion, that dream, to keep pursuing it. Take one step closer to it. Keep working at it, right? Till it becomes a reality. So sometimes I wonder if delusion is kind of necessary for you to achieve, these great goals that you set for yourself, or things that really do seem impossible. Now, is that wrong to do? I don't know. It really depends on each individual. I could even say for myself, I was probably kind of delusional as a kid for me believing in that, and I really did work towards it. And so, with that in mind, right, you know, at the end of the day, I didn't achieve it. There's many people out there that pursued wanting to be in the NBA, but it came up short, right? There's also a lot of great basketball players that ended up playing professional overseas and made a good living, and now they're doing well. Maybe they have a family. Who knows? Maybe they get into coaching. You know, even though they came up short on one thing, it opened other doors uh, to another route, another path to coaching, a path to playing professional elsewhere, and still making a living, still doing pretty well for themselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. But because they had their pursuit going into the NBA, this path wouldn't have opened up for them, right? So even if one door closes, another one opens, right? So maybe that's one way of looking at failure is, hey, one door has closed for us, but there's other doors out there. There's other opportunities elsewhere that you could pursue. And all the things that you learned in the past while uh, achieving one dream or trying to achieve one dream, you could take that with you and go on to the next door, right? So that's definitely one way of looking at failure. And the thing is, I guess to add to that, how do you deal with it when you do have to close that door? Because I could say, even for myself, when I dealt with failure, when things really didn't go my way, and it's not just basketball too. There's this, other life experiences, which maybe I could share sometime in the future. But just generally speaking, is it hit me pretty hard. I would say I wasn't very good at dealing with failure. Now that I'm older now, I deal with it a lot better. I have a healthier perspective on dealing with failure, and I'll share that towards the end. What's a healthier perspective? But man, I was so down about. I'd really get depressed. I'd really get down about myself when things didn't go my way. I'd get really upset. It hurt me so much. Like it felt like it felt like someone I knew died. Someone close to me died. That's how I dealt with failure at times. I'd really be depressed, and even with something like basketball and that pursuit, it took me a long time to really get over that, and to really be at peace with that, and understanding, having a healthier perspective that, hey, you know, just because you didn't achieve this doesn't mean you can't achieve other goals out there. You can't do other things, great things in your life. Maybe this just wasn't the path that was set to you, but maybe there's another great opportunity elsewhere, and you could achieve a lot of great things um, in a different path. And so I think as I gotten older, that's something that I understood. In order to maybe succeed in other things, you have to come up short along the way, and that's okay because there's other doors out there, right? There's other opportunities for you to pursue. And so I understood that as I gotten older, and that's what brought me to peace with a lot of my shortcomings, right? And it's not even just like goals or tasks that I set for myself that I came up short. But me as a person, where you came up short as a person, maybe being a better friend or being a better son, uh, better sibling, just a better neighbor, even stuff like that, like little small things that, where I come up short that when I reflect on my actions, I know, hey, I could do this better, right? And so I think another point to make is just not telling yourself that you're a failure. Yeah, you do fail at things, but it is necessary. It is a step maybe in the right direction for you to succeed at something else, right? And we could talk about what success is. I mean, people equate it to, having a lot of money, having financial success. It may be just having a family, having a good job, or even something more valuable than that, maybe just uh being a loving person, to a good husband, a good father, or having a higher purpose that's greater than yourself, fulfilling that, doing things that help others, having platforms to be able to help other people rather than it being about achieving accolades for yourself. I mean, people have different definitions of success, but what I was going back to is not calling yourself a failure. I think that's the biggest thing. Making that distinction. Hey, it's okay to fail at certain things, but are you a failure? Are you a failure at life? Because I think when you call yourself that, that's when you get really down, and you get to a point where you feel incapable of doing anything. You feel like because you're a failure, you're not good enough to achieve anything else, to achieve any goals that you set for yourself. You're not good enough to do anything. You're not good enough to live. And that's when it gets dark, right? That's when it gets really hard. And so I would really encourage people not to have that mindset, to not believe that you're a failure. It's okay to fail, but I don't think it's okay to to proclaim yourself to be a failure. And so even for myself, that's something I've wrestled with throughout my life. Just because I failed at certain things doesn't mean I'm a failure, right? I mean, I would think you're really a failure if you just quit at life, right? But no one wants that. I don't want that for anybody. It's okay if you fall down. I mean, but you could get back up, and sometimes you need a hand. You need someone to lend their hand, and that's where you could you could be the one to hold out your hand and help someone up when they're down, when they're at their lowest, when they failed at something, when they came up short, when they hit rock bottom. And so I feel like that's pretty much what I have to say about failure. I mean, I think I covered all the bases. But that's my perspective on it. I mean, it's okay to fail at life. It's okay to come up short on certain things. You're not going to be 100% successful. Even for a guy like Michael Jordan, I mean, he had to go through failure. It's not like every season he won a championship. I mean, he got cut his sophomore year just trying to make the varsity team. But yet, he's regarded as one of the greatest basketball players to ever play the game. And so we all fail. We all come up short. It's just, what do you do after you do come up short? What's the next step? What's the next opportunity to take? How you gonna take it? How you gonna take after falling to the ground? Are you gonna get right back up, or are you just gonna stay down and sulk and cry? Not that that not that that's wrong, but you can only do that for so long, right? You gotta get back up at some point. And so that's my take on failure. I think it's okay to fail at certain things. And even if people were to pursue things like lofty goals, lofty dreams that they probably can't achieve, who am I to say that they shouldn't pursue it? You know? If I were to tell myself, uh, you shouldn't pursue the NBA, you're not gonna make it. Is that something I would tell to myself, to the younger me when I was like 13, 14 years old? Probably not. I think what I would say, I probably tell myself to play soccer. Actually, the chance of me making professional playing soccer, that'd probably be the move. But with all jokes aside, I mean, if I really wanted to keep pursuing basketball, uh, me being at the age that I am, telling my younger self, I'd say, well, if you really want to do it, then you got to work pretty hard. You might have to do this, this, and this. You probably need to be more disciplined to give yourself a better chance. And hey, if you don't make it, it's not the end of the world. There could be other opportunities out there. Maybe you could coach. Maybe you could play somewhere else. Make a living doing something with basketball, right? So there's a lot of opportunities out there, even if you don't achieve that dream. But just carry on the lessons that you attained throughout the journey. Because as I say, right, it's cliche. It's not so much about the destination, it's about the journey, right? But during the journey, we come across times where we come up short, where we fail at certain things. But maybe you need it in order to succeed on the next thing. And so we'll wrap it up here, guys. I really enjoy this podcast episode. Really, really introspective for me to reflect on my life experience. Brings a lot of clarity on my perspective on failure. It was really good for myself. This was some good, I guess, soul reflecting for myself. And hopefully it encourages you too, that you're not alone in this. And hopefully maybe you can adopt a more healthier perspective and healthier habit on dealing with failure. And so you may not agree with me. People have different ways, different perspective on failure, on dealing with failure. But this is just mine. And hopefully it's encouragement. Hopefully it's helpful for you. It can add a little perspective in your life. So thank you once again. This will wrap up our episode. If you guys like content like this, please let me know. If there's certain topics that are worth discussing, leave it in the comment section below. Please sub to this channel if you haven't already and support us. And if you have enjoyed this video, please drop a like. Hit the notification button. Really appreciate it. I hope to post more videos like this, more podcasts where we could talk about a lot of good topics. Maybe I can share more about my life experiences in order for me to be a light, to be more helpful for those out there. Thank you again, and I hope to see you guys on the next one. Peace.